This is Dr. Jennifer Jansen from the Zepf Center. You're listening to JJ's Clinical Connection, connecting you to clinical topics. Welcome back to JJ's Clinical Connections. Today, we're talking about the important but often overlooked topic of problem gambling. Gambling is everywhere: sports betting, casinos, online gaming. But when does it cross the line from fun to harmful? To help us separate gambling fact from fiction, we're joined by our gambling treatment team, Program Manager Megan Poliquin, and problem gambling counselors Allison Huss and Aubrey Price. This mighty team of three is pushing the boundaries of traditional gambling treatment, from innovative community partnerships to widespread gambling education efforts. This program is shaping the future of their field. Join us for another engaging conversation as this team shares their insights on gambling disorder, problem gambling warning signs, treatment options, and recovery. Let's get into it. All right. Well, welcome to the studio today. I'm so excited to start talking with you guys and get into this material. But before we do that, do you want to introduce yourselves to our listeners?
Sure. This is Megan Poliquin. I am the manager of gambling treatment and prevention at the Zepf Center, and it'll be my 7th year at Zepf Center this year.
I am Allison Huss. I am a gambling counselor, and I have been at the Zepf Center since April of 23.
Hi, my name is Aubrey Price. I'm also a gambling counselor here at Zepf Center, and then in May will be my first year here.
Wow, sounds good. Well, let's start off by defining problem gambling. How would you define problem gambling?
We would define problem gambling as gambling beyond someone's mean or to what is not responsible with them. Gambling is defined as risking anything of value for something of chance. And so problem gambling is when that chance creates harm or impairment in someone's life. If someone is risking their finances, their relationships, or their well-being as a person.
And there are many ways that somebody can engage in just gambling to begin with. Can we talk a little bit about all the different forms of gambling?
Yeah, I think gambling is really everywhere today. There's the stereotypical places of the casino, lottery, scratch-off tickets, and even sports betting is so popularized now. But it is really in day-to-day, the classic bets that you're making with your friends, dice.
What about bingo and stuff too?
Oh,
right?
yeah, absolutely. Bingo is just as important. I think all those things have harm for people that maybe have a problem with their gambling.
I think really too, gambling is everywhere. So you used to be able to only gamble at brick and mortar establishments, but now you can gamble on your phone, you can gamble in video games, you can gamble on demand 24/7. Where there's a will, there's a way.
That has changed too with sports betting in terms of the access that people have to gambling. What kinds of impact have you seen in this population since we've really cracked open access to gambling?
So sports betting legalized and went live in Ohio in 2023. What we've seen here at the gambling treatment program at Zepf is definitely an influx in younger individuals seeking help and younger males specifically. We've also seen an increase in calls from family members and partners that are worried about someone's problem gambling. Problem gambling doesn't discriminate, so we see it from all ages, all demographics, all genders. But most recently, we have seen an increase in younger males and family members calling us.
Let's talk a little bit more about the problems that you see with gambling, because many of our listeners might think, well, it's legal and people have been doing it since the beginning of time. So why would this be a problem now? What are some of the problems that you're seeing for people that come in for treatment?
Some of the common problems we see are people all of a sudden not being able to pay their bills, even though they have good jobs, spending more time thinking about gambling than maybe they're really intending to, noticing that they're checking their phones frequently throughout the day when they're at work or when they're with family members, really just taking time away from their normal daily activities. And lastly, a big thing would be people criticizing the way they bet. If they have a spouse or a parent who doesn't understand why they're betting the way they are, that can be a big problem.
What are some of the misconceptions or myths that you see around gambling disorder? And how do these impact people that are seeking treatment?
I would say one of the biggest stereotypes or myths about problem gambling is that someone can control their problem gambling. With substance use addictions like drinking and drugs, it's a little bit more accepted that when you have an addiction, you can't control it. It's not an argument of willpower or not. I think we still have a ways to go in terms of society understanding the same with gambling addiction, that it's a medical disease of the brain and that willpower alone is not enough to stop your problem gambling. And I think that creates a really huge stigma with people that are struggling with problem gambling because they're hearing it from their friends and family. Why can't you just stop? Why are you doing this? This is bad for our family. This is bad for our finances. And it creates a lot of shame and guilt and embarrassment because the problem gambler might be thinking, why can't I stop? Everyone thinks I should be able to stop, but I can't. And so that's a huge barrier to treatment seeking, right? I feel embarrassed about my problem. I feel shameful about my problem, and I feel guilty about the problem I've created, and I don't know how to stop, but everyone else thinks that I can.
How common is gambling disorder, and what do the prevalence rates in Ohio tell us?
So the most recent data we have about problem gambling in Ohio is from 2022. Ohio does a gambling survey every 5 years. The first one was done in 2012 when the casinos arrived in Ohio, and the prevalence rate for low risk, moderate risk, or problem gambling in 2012 was about 5.7%. 5 years later, in 2017, I believe that went up to a little bit over 10%. And then in 2022, that percentage was 19.8%. So that would indicate that nearly 20% of adult Ohioans could be categorized as low risk, moderate risk, or problem gamblers. That's 1 in 5. That's pretty significant. And that was before sports betting was even legalized and live in 2023.
Who's most at risk for developing problem gambling?
So again, kind of linking this back to the data we have from 2022 and Ohio specifically, what that found was that 18 to 24-year-olds had the highest risk for developing a gambling problem. College students are particularly vulnerable. And I know that men and women, I think, were scoring about equal on their vulnerability, but African-American races had a much higher vulnerability risk rate associated with problem gambling when compared to other races. So we're looking at the younger adults, African-American college student. Low income is also a vulnerable population because gambling is attractive, right? It's a chance to win big, to solve my financial problems.
Okay. And how do mental health issues play into problem gambling? Are you guys seeing any kind of link between mental health issues and this disorder?
I mean, there is certainly plenty of research that shows that, dual diagnoses are big impact with a lot of clients specifically we see here at Zepf Center, whether that is mental health or an AOD, SUD diagnosis. I think especially for people who have experienced addictions in their life, we see a lot of transferring the addiction, right? We're stopping the drinking, but we're going to gambling to still have those endorphins and that rush. So I think it is the same with mental health, right? The, depression, anxiety, that look for those good feelings, or even when we are in that low place, just finding that sense of connection or purpose is certainly something we see a lot of our clients.
So let's talk a little bit about the impact that problem gambling has on people psychologically, emotionally. What kinds of things are you guys seeing in terms of what your clients might be struggling with?
I think that our clients are struggling with so much more than just problem gambling. That is just the tip of the iceberg that they're coming in for help for at the time. But so often, the problem gambling is just a symptom of a bigger problem, whether that's depression, anxiety, ADHD, a stressful life transition, whether you lost your job or maybe you lost a family member, maybe you're going through a significant life change that just has not been easy for you. Those are usually the deeper root causes that we try to get to in treatment, because if we just treat the problem gambling and we don't treat why the problem gambling happened, then we're not really setting our clients up for success. We're setting them up to transfer their problem gambling to a different behavior to cope. So oftentimes as we're unraveling all of that, what's really going on beneath the surface, some clients do really struggle emotionally and with their mental health. Something we're always doing with the clients that we work with is screening them for suicide ideation and suicidal thoughts, because there is a strong correlation with problem gambling and suicidal ideation, because no one is going to stop you from betting your last dollar or from taking your 5th cash advance. You can lose everything in a few hours, really. And we have had clients that have done just that because they haven't been able to stop, and they've been chasing their losses to a point of extinction where they only stop because they've ran out of funds. And that type of feeling of knowing that you've ran out of money and that you've kept your gambling a secret from everyone in your life, and you don't have anywhere else to go. There's no more cash advances to take. There's no more quick loans to get. It's starting to feel like it's all over. That can really take someone to a dark place, understandably so. And so whenever we're meeting clients for the first time, we're bringing that up. We're talking about it because there is shame and stigma associated with feeling that way to begin with. So we can't necessarily rely on people to bring that up themselves. Part of our work is letting them know, hey, if you have felt that way, that's totally normal, because problem gambling can really take us to a horrible, dark place. So we would understand if you had thoughts like that.
Let's talk a little bit about some of this terminology here. Tell me the difference between an action gambler and an escape gambler.
So this kind of plays into the comorbidities that come with gambling disorder, sometimes the substance use or ongoing mental health like depression, anxiety, ADHD, plays into how you might be able to classify someone's problem gambling as escape or action. And stereotypically, escape gambling is described as someone who gambles to escape life's stressors. So this could be someone that is struggling with a life transition. Maybe they are struggling with underlying depression or anxiety. They have a lot of stressors going on, and gambling is the coping skill to relieve life stressors. It's the escape. I don't have to think about what's going on in my life for a little while because I'm occupied and distracted by gambling. Oftentimes, escape gambling looks like slot machines, scratch-off tickets, types of gambling that don't require much effort or thought. I can just press the button on the slot machine and see if my life has changed forever. I can just scratch the ticket and see if I won big. Action gambling, on the other hand, is more associated with the excitement and the drive behind the actual act of gambling. So this looks like sports betting. This looks like table games, poker. These are often associated with gambling styles that look like it's a game of skill, right? Like if I study my football team long enough, I'll know all of their player stats and I'll make the best bet, so I'll surely win. So action gambling is more associated with the adrenaline behind gambling, the excitement, chasing a big win. So sometimes action gambling can be associated with coping with life stressors, but more often than not, it's something that sometimes people participate in really harmlessly at first, and it's just fun and everyone's doing it, and my group chat is doing it, but it becomes something where I'm having so much fun that I don't want to stop. So I want to keep going and I want to place larger bets. And then I fall into the cycle of losing and chasing, and now I don't know how to stop either way.
And I know that problem gambling has made its way into the most recent Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Behavioral Health Conditions. What are some of the criteria you guys use to diagnose problem gambling? How does someone know if their gambling is becoming problematic for them?
Some of the criteria we look at when diagnosing are you placing bets larger over time to achieve that desired excitement? Maybe starting at $1 bets isn't doing it anymore, so going to $5 bets or even more. Trying to win back losses, that chasing that comes with gambling is a diagnostic criteria. A diagnostic criteria is also lying. Are you lying about how much money you're spending or how often you're doing it? We also look at impact on relationships. If you've jeopardized any career opportunities or personal relationships because of your gambling. But yeah, overall, there's 9 criteria to gambling disorder. And in order to be diagnosed with a gambling disorder, you need to meet 4 of those or more.
So it definitely sounds like there is brain science involved here. Megan, you talked a little bit at the beginning about understanding that our community has around addiction to substances. But what can you tell us about the brain chemistry in process addictions like gambling?
So the brain chemistry in process addictions like gambling is actually very similar, nearly identical, right, to someone abusing substances. What is happening in the brain when someone is gambling, problem gambling, is no different than what is happening in someone's brain when they're using illicit substances or they're struggling with alcohol. The same parts of the brain are lighting up to send you that signal that you should be doing this more. Something interesting about gambling is that what they've noticed and what they've studied is this anticipatory response when you're gambling. And so when someone is getting ready to place a bet or to press the slot machine button or to scratch off their ticket, they're getting the anticipatory dopamine response. And so they're actually being flooded with dopamine before they've even found out if they've won or lost. And that's one thing that can make gambling particularly addictive, is that I'm getting the rush of dopamine before I know if I should or not, if I actually won or not. So if I lose, my brain sends me the signal, oh, but you were really close, try again. And if you win, the brain sends you the signal, that was fun, do it again. So it can be really hard to stop because you're being rewarded whether you win or lose.
Sure. There's no real consequence to the outcome of the play. Absolutely. Well, I'm wondering what some of the biggest barriers are that people face when seeking treatment for problem gambling.
You know, we've talked about shame and stigma with problem gambling, and I think that is probably the number one barrier to treatment seeking, is just the emotional roller coaster of whether or not I want to accept if I have a gambling problem or not, because if I accept I have a gambling problem, I need to do something about it. So I think denial is also a big barrier of, we think I'm just, one more gambling adventure away from winning big, and then I can put all of this behind me. And we almost kind of bargain and say, if higher power, God, whoever, if you let me win big one more time, I promise I'll do everything right and I'll never do it again. And so we stay trapped in this cycle of thinking maybe I don't need to get help because maybe I'm one more bet away from solving it all on my own. So denial, shame, those are the two that I see the most. What about you guys?
I was going to say, I would add, there's this fear of never being able to do something again, right? Especially with this younger generation, the idea of gambling abstinence is very scary. So I think there's a lot of hesitation around treatment, knowing that, oh, if I go in and talk to this person, they're going to tell me I should probably stop doing this thing that I actually enjoy doing.
No, that's a big one, though, is the younger generations are definitely more abstinence averse. And so the idea of quitting something entirely can be kind of a turnoff, which is a good segue into the fact that we do work with harm reduction, right? Like, we're not going to tell you what to do. We're going to ask you what it is that you want, and we'll give you a few paths to get there. And harm reduction is an option. We'd rather have someone seek treatment with us on a harm reduction goal than not seek treatment at all because they think that they have to quit entirely.
Absolutely. Well, then let's talk a little bit about what gambling treatment looks like at Zepf Center.
So gambling treatment at Zepf Center is definitely person-centered in that the goal is to meet the client where they're at, right? So part of that is there is no cost. It is completely free to anyone that lives in Ohio, and that includes telehealth or in-person treatment, which we offer both. And then we also have groups twice a week for anyone in our program to get to come together, have a discussion, go over something gambling based. But I think what's most important about our treatment is that, like I said, it is person-centered, right? There's no specific week by week criteria that we follow. We want to meet the person where they're at because that's where you see progress. So I think that's what's really unique about this field is that each of our clients and how we spend that hour with them, whether in person or through telehealth, is so unique and designed specifically for them.
How important is family support in the recovery process?
Family support can be really integral to the recovery process for individuals. Family support can not only help individuals not feel alone and feel encouraged in their treatment, but family support can also provide a lot of accountability and boundary setting, which can be really crucial, especially in the beginning processes of treatment and recovery.
I would say family support is critical. If someone is seeking help for their problem gambling and they have access to family support, then getting the family involved in their recovery can really, really help break down the shame and stigma and help the family understand what their loved one is going through. Because I think there's a lot of learning that needs to be done, not only for the person who's working on their problem gambling, but for their close friends and family who may be gambling themselves, and being able to connect with family either by family members that are calling us worried about a loved one, or by helping our clients learn how to facilitate those conversations on their own. Like Allison said, learning how to set boundaries and articulate clearly what is going on and how their family or their partner can best support them. We've seen really good results when clients are able to do that.
Based on your work here at Zepf Center, what trends are you guys seeing in the gambling behaviors and in your treatment?
Certainly for the trends, in my past year here, I would say that a good majority of the people that I'm seeing are sports betting, and they're becoming younger and younger. I don't know if that's just an us here at Zepf thing or an all over Ohio thing, but I think we can all agree that sports betting, younger males are reaching out for treatment, or they're having family and friends encourage them to reach out for treatment. That's definitely the trend I'm seeing.
Yeah, and I think too, not necessarily that we've been seeing people seeking treatment for this, but it's been more of like a field conversation that people are becoming more and more worried about how you can gamble in video games. And that doesn't only affect our youth and our individuals under 18. Plenty of adults play video games, and they are in almost any video game that you can play. I mean, if you play Candy Crush and they say, here, give us $5, we'll give you 10 more lives, that's a gamble. Yes, you're getting what you paid for, but you don't know how long those lives are going to last you. And so, not that people have necessarily been seeking treatment for video gaming and gambling, but it is in the field a hot topic of people wondering what that will look like for our youth if they are gambling in video games, or they're exposed to those kind of visuals when they are 18 and when they are 21. Are they going to be more likely to seek out gambling because they are already familiar with what that looks like and they've been playing it, maybe not for real, but now they do get to play it for real. So time will tell on what happens in the next 5 to 10 years.
I'm sure you guys will keep an eye on the pulse of that. And I also know that you guys are out in the community a lot. Tell me a little bit about the community outreach that you are doing for Zepf Center involved in problem gambling.
So we've been doing a lot of problem gambling outreach in the community. the last several years, but really a lot more since sports betting legalized in 2023. We try to focus our efforts really on those vulnerable populations. So we've been spending a lot of time on college campuses, and we do have a partnership with the University of Toledo. So we are going to a lot of their football games, their basketball games, and we're asking people to complete a brief biosocial gambling screen, which is a brief 3-question screen that if you answer yes to one of the 3 questions would indicate that if I talked to you long enough and you were honest enough, you might have some problems with gambling. So not only are we trying to do more outreach, but we're also trying to really maximize that outreach and get data in our community about what are college students struggling with problem gambling.
Why is it important to connect with the attendees at these events?
It's important for a lot of reasons. Specifically at the sporting events, that's one of the best ways to find your sports bettors is they're probably at the game. I'm sure many of them stay home and watch, 8 games at a time. But at a sporting event, you're more likely to be able to see that 18 to 24-year-old age range, and you're more able to capture maybe the individuals that are sports betting. But also being able to provide outreach in the community and being able to build a relationship with the community has been really the overall goal. We like the survey data we get so that we can utilize it and see the trends. We like being able to be at the games and give out freebies. But more importantly, Ohioans are inundated with gambling advertisements, and we aren't necessarily able to flood them with gambling treatment program at Zepf Center, but we are able to show up for our community, and many people might not know that there's a gambling treatment program right in their backyard. So our goal has always been connecting with the community. We want you to come up to our table and talk with us. And it's okay if you come up to our table and say, oh, well, I don't have a gambling problem. We'll say, that's great. We don't want you to have a problem. But the chances of you knowing someone that might have a problem are pretty high. And so just creating that relationship in the community so more people in Ohio know, hey, have you heard of Zeff's program? They might be able to help you, has been what we've wanted to do the most.
So I know you guys are working with the University of Toledo, but what other kinds of community events are you participating in?
One of the things that we're doing within Toledo is working with the Toledo Walleye downtown, going to the games and doing sort of the same outreach that we are doing at the University of Toledo. This is a different crowd that we're reaching, with it perhaps being less college students, but a lot of young adults and family members with kids. So that's been really exciting for us, just to see a different demographic here in Toledo and continue just to get our information out there, especially to people who may know a loved one who needs our help.
We also have been working with Bowling Green State University for some campus events, doing outreach on that campus as well with their health and wellness department. And we're looking forward to more collaboration with the universities to get involved with that younger population.
What advice would you give to someone who is struggling with problem gambling and maybe considering getting help?
I think the first step, part of admitting you have a problem is reaching out to your family's support or defining who your support is. Going back to the criteria, the DSM-5 criteria, there is a lot of lying and concealing the gambling behaviors. So who is your support? Is it a family member? Is it your partner or friend? Having that vulnerability and sharing what's going on, I think before you even come to treatment, is something that's important. So that way, you have your support team and those that are cheering you on and are going to help you along in this process, because it is hard to do this by yourself.
My advice would be just knowing that you're not alone. As we talked about this stigma of if something strikes that maybe that does relate and you hadn't thought about gambling being a problem before, just even knowing that there are other people out there who are struggling, but that there's also help available, knowing that you're not alone and there are people that are there to help you if you don't have that support system right now.
My best advice would be to call us. You don't have to commit to anything by calling us. Myself, Allison, and Aubrey are all specially trained in treating gambling problems. So not only do we have the licenses to be mental health and substance use treatment counselors, we also have the training with gambling disorder. So there isn't anything that you're going to tell us or ask us that is going to surprise us or confuse us. You're not going to have to over-explain anything to us. We know what you're talking about, and we understand. And call us, talk to us, ask us your questions. You can do all of that without committing to treatment. That's what we want. We want you to call us if you have questions. And if you're not ready to take the next step at that time, that's okay. But at least making the phone call, asking your questions, let us put your mind at ease. Let us remind you that we understand what you're going through and we're prepared and ready to help.
Besides Zepf Center's problem gambling treatment program, what are some of the local resources available for those who are struggling with problem gambling?
So locally, we have Gamblers Anonymous meetings, which Gamblers Anonymous is a 12-step peer-led fellowship, very similar to AA or NA, just specifically for gambling, which we highly encourage all of our clients to get involved with, especially if they're looking for more social support. Gamblers Anonymous is a great resource to help feel connected to other people in the community beyond just your treatment provider. It gives a new perspective to people who have been through similar situations. We also have Gam-Anon in our community, which is similar to Gamblers Anonymous, but for loved ones or family members of someone with a problem with gambling. Again, getting that social support, sharing struggles, sharing successes. We also have Time Out Ohio, which is by the Ohio Casino Control and Ohio Lottery Commission. It offers the ability for individuals who have decided they have some sort of problem with gambling to exclude themselves from all of Ohio's casinos, racinos, and sports betting and gaming programs. And with Time Out Ohio, individuals can decide if they want to do a year, 5-year, or a lifetime exclusion from those. Pause Before You Play is another program from Ohio for Responsible Gambling that is, again, in support of preventing gambling disorder, sharing resources, and treatment options. And lastly, Change the Game Ohio is also by Ohio for Responsible Gambling. And this initiative is focused really on youth gaming and the gambling that we mentioned that can be brought about in youth games.
Okay, so I also understand there's something called Gam Ban. Can you tell me what that is and how it helps individuals control their gambling habits?
Yeah, so Gamban is a great tool that a lot of our clients use. It is an app that anyone can download onto their phone, iPad, computer, whatever it is. It is completely free to all Ohioans, but it is a software that bans you from all sports betting apps and websites. So it's great for our clients who want to take that step. It kind of forces you to have some support with someone who has your password, who can check in on you and how you're doing. But it is something that can stay on your phone for as long as you need it to prevent you from being able to get into FanDuel, MGM, any of those things.
Great. So let's wrap up by talking about what long-term recovery from problem gambling disorder looks like.
I think that what I've seen some of my long-term clients in recovery achieve is it's more than just paying your debts back. It's more than just getting forgiveness. It's actually really liking the life that you live. And I think in general, recovery is about creating the life that you were always meant to live, that you deserve to live. And some of the steps along the way might be making amends and paying back your gambling debts and doing some really hard work on yourself. But overall, what I've seen my clients in long-term recovery achieve is a sense of peace, a sense of happiness, a sense of confidence that I might still think about gambling from time to time because I can't help automatic thoughts that come through my mind, but I don't have to do anything about them. That sense of peace and trust in yourself that you can handle it and that you don't have to be worried every single day, stressed every single day.
I was going to add, I think the word I always think of when I think of long-term recovery specifically for gambling disorder is freedom. Freedom from these stigmas and shame and isolation that so many of our clients have found themselves in for as long as they've been experiencing gambling. And so I think that's the most important thing, is just seeing the relief they feel of, my problems have changed. My life is not perfect, but at least I can tackle these problems now, where before I couldn't even imagine doing that with the added pressure and stress I was under because of my gambling. So I think it's just that freedom and, like Megan said, that peace of mind that comes when gambling isn't the number one priority for a person anymore.
Just to add on to that too, I think practically thinking about it with that peace of mind is just getting back to your old routines, not having as much stress, not having to worry about lying or living a secret life anymore. A lot of times clients will say in long-term recovery of I feel like who I was before I started gambling. And so just really engaging back in the things that once made you happy and feel fulfilled.
If someone is listening today and they're thinking about reaching out for help, who should they call?
So if you're in Ohio, you can call Zepf Center's Gambling Treatment Program directly by calling 419-841-7701 and asking to be connected with the gambling treatment team. If you're not in Ohio, there is a national gambling helpline, which is 1-800-GAMBLER, and simply calling 1-800-GAMBLER will connect you with your state's service line based off of the area code you're calling from.
Well, I want to thank the three of you for coming into the studio today and sharing so much information with us about problem gambling, and also for being a beacon of hope to those out there that might be struggling.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us.
This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you for the opportunity for letting us come and talk today.
This has been such an insightful conversation. Thanks to Megan, Allison, and Aubrey for sharing their expertise on problem gambling and recovery. For those listening to today's episode, remember that confidential support is available and free for Ohio residents. If you or a loved one is struggling with problem gambling, reach out to Zepf Center or check the online resources linked on our website. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to download and share it. For the latest clinical connections, subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever your favorite podcasts are found. For more information about gambling treatment services and other resources mentioned in this episode, check out our show notes. For more information on Zepf Center, visit us at zeffcenter.org or find us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Until next time, this is Dr. Jennifer Jansen, signing off.